so what I'm going to do is place this tracing paper on top of the paintings in the book and then trace the design techniques on top of it, just to keep my skills a little bit sharper and allow me to see them a lot quicker than usual. So I'm going to be recording with these Durango pivot head sunglasses just to give you a point of view perspective. So take this tracing paper. I'm going to leave links in the description down below. You guys can check out these if you like. But it's just ordinary tracing paper, doesn't have to be fancy or anything, whatever's cheapest. And I cut it in half because that's the size of my book. And then I use this tape. So it's removable double-sided tape. That way it doesn't damage the book. So I'm gonna take a piece of that, put it on the top, and I'll show you the rest. And I'll show you just a couple that I've done so far. I almost went through this whole book. And this is a really good book. I got this in Paris at the Louvre, and it just basically shows all the best paintings according to their century. So what I do is I tape it on there, put the tape up here, and I've got two pencils over here. Doesn't matter which one you use. I use this mechanical pencil a lot just because it's handy and it retracts. You just push this and it goes back in. This one's nice too. I draw with this one a lot. It's a little dull, but you got a sharpener, stapler, lead holder. I'm gonna link to that below too because I can't remember the names of these sometimes. So what I do is just I put it in there, make sure there's enough lead out here, and then just twist it like this, and eventually it'll just sharpen itself. Awesome little sharpener. So I think it's 10 bucks, and I thought that was expensive, but it works perfect every time. So I got a nice point now. I've also got 5 calipers over there that I can use to analyze some of these too. So this first one, I taped the tracing paper on there. I traced around each image, and I was putting the page number on there because I didn't have tape at the time. But I'll just go through and I'll mark up all the design techniques that I noticed right off the bat. So this one first, you can see the triangular shape here. It's a triangular enclosure, so I made note of that. And then the small elongated hands, I like that, so I just circled it. That's just not really a technique, but I like how it looked. This one, I noticed the repeating diagonal lines. That's gamut, G-A-M-U-T, and that creates repetition throughout the image whenever you repeat the diagonal in the image. This one, I drew a line around the image. Usually you can notice the diagonals, the arabesques. I just made note of these sweeping arcs here. This arabesque running through here, and this sweeping arc, and this dominant diagonal. So this one, I noticed a flaw. Let me just tape this one on just so you guys can see how I taped this on. Pretty self-explanatory. Just take a piece. I don't smash it on there, I just lightly place it on there. So this painting, I initially noticed visual tension created by this hand being so close to her face. If someone had their hand that close to your face, it'd be annoying. So in this case, due to the law of proximity, it causes visual tension because it is so close to it. And then I also noticed this 90-degree angle that creates strength within the composition. So we can see it right here in her arm. This one, drew the line around the edge. Then I noticed the ellipse being created, these edge-to-edge relationships, this road coming down her dress, sweeping across this arm, and then coming up his arm, curving around, and then going back towards this line in the background, up his neck. He's repeating diagonals here in his legs and his side, right here. And this dark shape here next to the edge creates this sweeping motion around the edge there. So I made note of that right here. And I liked the fact that she had red puffy eyes, so I just circled her face and made note of it. Lots of great paintings in this. This painting right here, I noticed the ellipse being created. If you blur your eyes and not focus on one detail, you can see it a lot better. So you can see this motion coming around here. It kind of loses it right here, but then it continues up and around. So like this guy's shoulder around her dress, and then it gets a little bit lost and then it's back up there. Even if it's not a perfect ellipse, we still, under the surface, get a feeling of movement going around. And then there's plenty of repeating diagonals, the gamut, and then this arabesque coming down here, down his body, and then down her dress. And then all these repeating diagonals, see this? It's exactly the same as that. It's over here too. Okay, so let me do one for you guys. So if you're a MasterPass member, you'll have a checklist, and I'll do a little pop-up right here. That's the designed checklist that I created for the MasterPass members, where you can print it out if you want, or you can have it on your iPad or whatever, and you can just go down, check off which techniques they're using in their paintings, or you can use it in your own art to ensure that you use a lot of these techniques to create a masterpiece and not just, a Sunday painting. You want something that's remarkable, whether it's a photo or a painting. I make note of the exit up here. A lot of master painters would create, if they have a real dark forest scene, they'll create a window, an exit for the eyes to create depth. Like your eyes have to travel through this deep dark forest and then they can exit to the other side. So it creates the illusion of a little bit more depth in there. But anyway, this is my first tutorial outside of my mobile studio, which you can see the view out there. It's a bunch of surfers, which I'll do a video on a little bit later. So here we go. We have a painting by Ingris. It's a good painting. I already put the tracing paper on there, put the outline on the edge, and now we're just gonna take a look. Gonna blur our eyes, just make them out of focus. Mainly I look for the arabesque and the dominating diagonal. Then I squint and I see where the greatest area of contrast is, and it looks like the greatest area of contrast is right here if you squint. So we have a really light shoulder against the darker area of the backdrop. He did this on purpose. You can see how this is darker than this. So he's playing light to dark rhythms across the image. But he wants us to look here first, and guess what? He's got an arabesque coming down here, sweeps around and down her leg there. So we can make note of that. So I just make note, GAC, and then sometimes I'll just sketch this out. This is the arabesque. And then I'll look for repeating diagonals. So the only diagonal I see really that's standing out to me is this leg right here. But you can also see how he repeats the diagonal in this bed covering. I'll make note of this. And then this one. And then you can carry that diagonal up the painting. Sometimes you can use your pencil just to go across and help you find it. We see it in this near her armpit there. That's obvious. So this is gamut. And we can look for ellipses. We can look at gazing directions. So she's gazing this way. So typically with the gazing direction, so we split this painting in half. Usually if she's on this side and she's looking to that side, then it creates an imbalance in the composition. But in this case, I think it works because Ingris has incorporated this little curtain here to add a little bit more weight on this left side, and it helps balance the image. Another thing we can do, which I forgot to mention earlier, is I have these phi calipers, and we can measure if they used the phi calipers in their composition. So if we take a look at this Ingris again, so I noticed a couple different spots where he used phi ratio. We can tell just by this edge of the armpit, the edge of the painting, and then the edge of this armpit. So if we measure it, you can see it's pretty exact. And I noticed another one, which is, let's see, you can see that, the curtain, the edge of the curtain, the arm, and then this arm. Usually what I look for is just areas like this, corners being created. Let me get my pencil. Corners being created here, so I would usually measure here, or areas of contrast here, edges, hard edges here, and that's when you take your calipers and you just look and see if they line something up like that. So they did, look. Edge of the curtain, edge of this, and then this crease right here. You just take your calipers and you can go across the image and see what they did. We got another one where this curtain, this line here, meets up with her body, her right side, and then her elbow here. Bunch of surfers out there screaming. This one I noticed right off the bat, the repeating diagonals. So we can see the repeating diagonals in the legs here, and then in the sword. You can even see it here. We'll just make note of that. This gamut here. And this one. I'm gonna write gamut. And there was one other thing I noticed was this high contrasting edge here starting to curve, and that's usually a sign for an arabesque, a nice contrasting curve like that. You can see it a little bit coming up here and then working around his body and then his arm. But what else struck me was this ellipse right here being created. So with this edge and this edge, we're getting an elliptical shape right here. So I'm going to make note of that. And I'll just put the ellipse there, the arabesque. It's another arabesque, kind of circles around this way, across his arm again, and then comes down his cape. You can even see it coming down his arm here, and then down his leg. A lot of arabesques in this one. Just creating movement and unity. This one comes down, this one. And then if we squint and look for the greatest area of contrast, we're gonna probably just find that it's his face, this helmet, but it's close to his face, so these two pull our attention towards his face. And then his hand is another area of high contrast, and then that's about it. Down here is pretty high contrast. I would have liked to see this blended in more so it's not as contrasty, because we don't want our eyes to really pull down in this direction because there's not much down there that's interesting. So that's that one. The more you do this, the more you can incorporate it into your art, whether it's painting, sculpting, photography, anything. These visual techniques can be applied to anything like that. So I'll talk to you guys later. I hope you like this. Subscribe and like if you want to see more of these things, okay? Take care.